The scratch of pen on paper cut through the silence like a knife. Rosa stood frozen behind the thick velvet curtain in the Thomas Estate Library, watching her entire future crumble with every stroke of ink. She had come early to surprise Kenneth before the royal masquerade tonight, but instead, she was the one getting surprised. Kenneth sat across from Lindsay Brown and her father at the grand oak table. Between them lay a contract with Rosa's name crossed out in angry red ink. "The merger is complete, Mr. Thomas." Lindsay's father pushed the document forward with a satisfied smile. "50 million in gold to clear all your family debts. In exchange, you marry my daughter. Someone with actual capital and proper bloodline. Someone who belongs in our world." Rosa waited for Kenneth to say no. She waited for him to remember the 3 years they had spent together. 3 years of her writing his speeches, negotiating his deals, making him look brilliant in front of people who would have laughed at him otherwise. 3 years of love, or what she thought was love. She waited for him to fight for her. Kenneth signed the paper without even a pause. His hand moved smoothly across the page, selling her away like she was nothing more than an old piece of furniture he no longer needed. Rosa felt her chest tighten, but she refused to let the tears come. She would not cry for a man who could throw her away so easily. "What about Rosa?" Kenneth asked, but his voice sounded flat and empty, like he was asking about the weather. There was no emotion, no regret, just obligation. Lindsay laughed. The sound was cold and sharp like breaking glass. "I'd give her some money. Women like her are always resilient. They bounce back. Besides, she would never have fit into our world anyway. She's a commoner. No family name, no connections, no real value. Women like her." The words hit Rosa like a slap across the face. Commoners. The people who did all the real work while nobles like Kenneth took all the credit. The people who were useful until someone richer came along. Rosa's hands clenched into fists, but she stayed silent behind the curtain. She had to get out of here before they saw her, before she completely fell apart. She turned to leave and walked straight into a solid wall of chest. Strong hands grabbed her shoulders to steady her before she could fall. Rosa looked up into the face of a man she had never seen before at any court function. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair streaked with silver. He wore a simple military uniform, marked with faded medals, that had clearly seen real battle. His face was weathered and stern, with eyes like gray stone that seemed to look right through her and see everything she was trying to hide. "Leaving so soon, Miss Duncan?" His voice was low and controlled with something dangerous underneath it. "Who are you?" Rosa tried to pull away, but his grip remained steady and firm. Harlan Bradford. He glanced at the door she had been watching through, and then back at her. A slight knowing smile crossed his lips. A disgraced officer with nothing left to lose. And it appears we both have very good reasons to make the Thomas family regret their choices tonight. He extended one gloved hand toward her, like he was offering her something precious. "I have a proposition for you, Miss Duncan. One I think you will find very interesting." What Rosa did not know in that moment was that Harlan Bradford was not just some failed soldier cast aside by the kingdom. He was the man who decided which noble families rose to power and which ones fell into ruin. He was the shadow behind the throne, the invisible hand that controlled everything. And he had just chosen her. Rosa stared at his outstretched hand. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was insane. She did not know this man. She had no idea what he wanted or why he was even here. But the sound of Kenneth's laughter drifted through the door behind her, and something inside Rosa snapped. She was done being invisible. She was done being underestimated. She was done letting people like Kenneth use her and throw her away. She took Harlan Bradford's hand. His grip was strong and warm even through the glove. Something flickered in his eyes that might have been approval or satisfaction, or perhaps just recognition. two people who had both been discarded finding each other in the wreckage. The royal masquerade was already in full swing when Rosa arrived alone. She had gone home first and changed into the emerald green gown she had spent months planning for this night. It was supposed to be her grand debut as Kenneth's official fiancée, the night he would finally present her to the inner circle of the court as someone who mattered. Instead, she walked through the palace doors alone, with her head held high and her heart turned to stone in her chest. The ballroom was magnificent. 1,000 candles blazed from crystal chandeliers overhead, throwing dancing shadows across marble floors, polished to a mirror shine. Masked nobles swirled past in silks and velvets, worth more than most common people earned in their entire lifetimes. Rosa recognized nearly all of them, even behind their elaborate masks. She had memorized every face during her 3 years as Kenneth's shadow advisor. She had written half the speeches these people applauded. She had drafted the treaties they signed with such pride. She had negotiated the deals they celebrated, and not one of them knew her name. She moved through the crowd like a ghost, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing servant. The crystal felt fragile in her hand, delicate enough to shatter with just a little pressure. Like trust, like promises, like hearts. Ladies and gentlemen, the master of ceremonies' voice rang out over the music and conversation. May I present Lord Kenneth Thomas of House Thomas and his betrothed, Lady Lindsay Brown of Brown Holdings. The crowd parted like the sea. Kenneth entered at the top of the grand staircase, with Lindsay on his arm, and Rosa's breath caught in her throat, despite everything. Lindsay wore gold, not just a gold dress, but a gown so heavily encrusted with jewels and precious stones that she looked like she had bathed in liquid sunlight. Her tiara caught the candlelight and threw rainbow prisms across the walls and floor. She was beautiful in the way that expensive things are beautiful, polished and perfect and utterly cold. Kenneth wore his family colors of deep blue with silver trim. He looked exactly as he always had. Handsome in a soft, pampered way, or like a man who had never fought for anything in his entire life because he never had to. They descended the staircase together, and the entire court burst into applause. Rosa did not move. She stood near a marble column half hidden in shadow and watched the man she had loved accept congratulations for a marriage that had completely erased her from existence. It was like she had never existed at all. Ah, Kenneth, well done. Lord Ashford clapped him on the shoulder with enthusiasm. The Brown Alliance will do absolute wonders for your family standing at court. You've made an excellent choice, my boy. Indeed. Lady Whitmore's fan fluttered rapidly as she leaned in with a conspiratorial smile. And Lady Lindsay is so accomplished. I hear she studied economics at the Royal Academy. Studied, Rosa thought bitterly, so with private tutors and unlimited family money to pay for everything. Rosa had earned her education through scholarships and sleepless nights, working 3 different jobs just to afford the books that Kenneth's family could have bought, without even blinking. Kenneth has always had such excellent judgment. Lindsay's voice carried clearly across the ballroom. She pressed closer to Kenneth in a possessive gesture that made Rosa's stomach turn. He understands the value of proper breeding and the right connections. Those things matter in our world. Proper breeding. The words landed like a physical slap. Rosa's fingers tightened around her champagne glass until she thought it might shatter in her hand. Of course, there was that unfortunate situation with his previous arrangement. Lady Whitmore whispered, though not quietly enough. But really, what was he thinking? A commoner with no family name and no dowry? It was never going to work out properly. I heard she was quite clever, though, Lord Ashford said thoughtfully. Managed all his correspondence, helped with the treaty negotiations, that sort of thing. Cleverness is not breeding, Lindsay interjected smoothly with a dismissive wave of her hand. Any competent secretary can file papers and write letters. It takes real substance and character to actually lead a noble house. Secretary. 3 years of strategic genius, 3 years of saving Kenneth from his own stupidity, reduced to filing papers. Rosa felt something dark and cold settle in her chest, where her heart used to be. The music shifted to a slow waltz, and Kenneth led Lindsay to the center of the dance floor. They moved together with practiced ease, and the court watched with approving smiles and nods. This was the kind of couple they understood, the kind that made sense in their world of bloodlines and bank accounts and carefully arranged marriages. Two people who looked perfect together on paper, even if there was nothing real underneath. Rosa knew she should leave. She should walk out of this ballroom with whatever dignity she had left and never look back. But her feet would not move. Some part of her needed to witness this moment, needed to see exactly how thoroughly and completely she had been erased from Kenneth's life, like she had never mattered at all. "Excuse me, miss." A servant appeared beside her holding a silver tray. On it lay a single white rose and a folded note sealed with dark wax. "This is from the gentleman by the East Terrace," and he bowed slightly and then disappeared back into the crowd before Rosa could ask any questions. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the note. The handwriting was strong and angular, every letter formed with deliberate precision. "They are about to make the official announcement. If you want to stop this, meet me in the Royal Gardens now. If you choose not to, I understand completely. Either way, you deserve far better than being a footnote in someone else's story. H.B." Rosa looked toward the East Terrace. Through the tall glass doors, she could see a dark figure standing in shadow, military uniform outlined against the garden lights beyond. Harlan Bradford, the disgraced officer who had appeared in her life like something from a fever dream. What did he want? What was his proposition? And why did some part of her desperately want to find out? "Attention, please." The master of ceremonies struck his staff against the marble floor 3 times. The sharp crack echoed through the ballroom. The music stopped immediately. The dancing ceased. Every masked face turned toward the raised platform, where Kenneth and Lindsay now stood, with both their families gathered around them like they were presenting some great treasure to the kingdom. "It is my great honor," Kenneth's father, Gregory Thomas, announced in his booming voice, "to formally declare the engagement between my son, Kenneth, and Lady Lindsay Brown. The union of House Thomas and Brown Holdings will strengthen both our families and bring prosperity to all our holdings for generations to come." The court applauded politely, but champagne glasses were raised in toast all across the ballroom. Rosa felt like she was watching it all happen from very far away, like she was drowning and seeing the surface of the water getting further and further above her. However, Gregory continued, and something in his tone made the entire room fall silent. "There is one small matter of my son's previous arrangement that must be addressed publicly and properly." Rosa's heart stopped beating in her chest. Kenneth was briefly engaged to a Miss Rosa Duncan, a commoner who served as a personal assistant in our household. That engagement is hereby formally dissolved, effective immediately as of this moment. The crowd began to murmur and whisper. Several heads turned, searching the ballroom. Someone spotted Rosa standing by her column and pointed. Others followed their gaze until it felt like every eye in the room was fixed on her. Miss Duncan. Gregory's voice found her across the distance like an arrow. "Please step forward." Rosa's legs moved automatically, carrying her toward the platform, even though her mind was screaming at her to run. The crowd parted before her, and Noble stepped aside quickly, like she was carrying some contagious disease they did not want to catch. She climbed the steps slowly and stood before Gregory Thomas and his son and the woman who had bought her life for 50 million gold pieces. "Miss Duncan," Gregory said, his voice formal and public and absolutely final. "You have served House Thomas adequately in your limited capacity over these past years. However, you lack the proper lineage, the necessary connections, and frankly the substance required to elevate our family name to where it needs to be. My son's engagement to you was a youthful mistake and poor judgment on his part. We are correcting that mistake here tonight." The words echoed through the completely silent ballroom. Every noble was watching, drinking in this public humiliation like it was fine wine. "Do you have anything you wish to say?" Gregory asked, and there was a clear challenge in his eyes. He wanted her to argue, to make a scene, to prove to everyone watching that she was exactly as low class as they had always believed her to be. Rosa looked at Kenneth. His face was carefully blank behind his mask, showing nothing. 3 years. 3 years of loving him, building him up, making him look competent and brilliant to these people who would have laughed him out of court otherwise. So 3 years, and he could not even meet her eyes now. She smiled. It felt like ice forming on her lips, cold and sharp and deadly. "I have nothing to say to you," she said quietly. Then she turned to face the crowd gathered below. "To any of you, actually. You think breeding and bloodlines make you better than everyone else. You think your fancy titles give you worth and value. But I have seen your contracts and read your correspondence and fixed your mistakes. Half of you can barely write a single coherent letter without help from people like me." Shocked gasps rippled through the crowd like waves on water. Several ladies clutched their fans to their chests in horror. "Miss Duncan," Gregory warned, his face going red. "That is quite enough." "No, I am not finished." Rosa's voice stayed level and calm, but there was something deadly underneath it now. "You look down on commoners, but we are the ones keeping your entire world running smoothly. We are the architects and the strategists and the real minds behind all your so-called genius deals and treaties. And Kenneth," she finally looked directly at him, "you specifically are the worst of them all, because you knew my value. You used it every single day for 3 years, and then you sold me away the exact moment someone offered you a better price." Kenneth's face flushed bright red even behind his mask. "You are being dramatic. This is just business, Rosa. Nothing personal." "No," Rosa said. "This is cowardice." She pulled off the emerald ring he had given her, not the engagement ring that she had already thrown into the river, some but the promise ring from their first anniversary together. The one he had sworn meant forever. She held it up so everyone could see it clearly in the candlelight. Then she dropped it on the marble floor. It bounced once, twice, the small metallic sound impossibly loud in the dead silence. Then she turned and walked away. The crowd parted much faster this time. Nobles practically jumped out of her path like she had suddenly become dangerous. She heard the whispers starting behind her, the scandalized murmurs and shocked exclamations. She did not care anymore. Her face stayed composed, and her back remained perfectly straight. But inside, she was screaming. She pushed through the tall glass doors onto the east terrace. The night air hit her face like cold water, sharp and clarifying and real. The royal garden stretched out before her, and all perfectly manicured hedges and elegant fountain sculptures. Beautiful and artificial, just like everything else in this world. That was absolutely magnificent. Harlan Bradford stepped out from the shadows near the stone railing. Up close in the moonlight, Rosa could see him much more clearly now. He was older than she had first thought, perhaps in his mid-40s, but age had only refined his features into something striking and powerful. His dark hair was streaked with silver and pulled back from a face that was all sharp angles and steady, knowing eyes. The military uniform he wore was simple dark blue wool with plain brass buttons, nothing fancy or decorated. But something about the way he wore it, the way he carried himself, suggested absolute authority. "I just destroyed my entire reputation in front of the whole court," Rosa said, and her voice shook now that no one else could hear her. "You spoke truth to power." Harlan moved closer. "That is incredibly rare, and far more valuable than any reputation. Easy for you to say. Rosa wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. You are not the one they will be gossiping about tomorrow morning. Am I not? His smile was slight and knowing. A disgraced officer who was stripped of his rank and title for refusing to execute the king's enemies without proper trial or evidence. I have been the subject of vicious court gossip for 5 years now, Miss Duncan. I know exactly what you are facing. Rosa studied him more carefully. Why were you really stripped of your rank? Because I told the king that executing nobles based purely on suspicion, rather than solid evidence, would make him a tyrant instead of a just ruler. And Harlan's tone stayed completely neutral. He disagreed with my assessment. Very publicly, and very loudly, in front of the entire court. That was you. Rosa remembered the scandal from 5 years ago. A high-ranking military officer dressed down by the old king himself, stripped of title and position in front of everyone. The court had talked about nothing else for months. You are the Iron Shadow. I was, he corrected gently. Now I am just a man with an ancestral home, some land, and a reputation that makes most nobles extremely uncomfortable. Then why are you here tonight at a royal masquerade? Why would you come back to a place that rejected you? Because the new king sends me an invitation every single year. Harlan's eyes glinted with something dangerous in the moonlight. He does that to remind me that I am still breathing at his pleasure, and could be removed at any moment if I displease him. Sounds like you and I have something in common then, Rosa said bitterly. Being constantly reminded of our place in the world. The difference, Miss Duncan, is that I stopped accepting the place they assigned to me a very long time ago, Harlan said quietly. The real question is whether you will do the same. Rosa looked back through the glass doors. Inside the ballroom, the party had already resumed. Kenneth and Lindsay were dancing again. The scandal of Rosa's outburst was already fading into entertainment, something amusing to gossip about over breakfast. By tomorrow, it would just be a funny story about the commoner who forgot her place and thought she actually belonged among her betters. Your proposition, Rosa said, after turning back to face Harlan. In your note, you mentioned a proposition. What exactly are you offering me? Harlan reached into his coat and pulled out a folded document sealed with wax. A contract for 1 year of marriage. At the end of that year, you walk away with enough money to start over anywhere you choose in the world. A title that will open doors your considerable talent deserves. And the deep satisfaction of watching Kenneth Thomas realize exactly what he lost when he threw you away. Why would you possibly do this? Rosa asked, suspicion rising. You do not even know me. I know enough. Harlan's gaze was steady and unwavering. I know you are brilliant, because I have read the treatise you ghost wrote for House Thomas. I know you are brave because I just watched you face down an entire court and tell them exactly what you think of them. And I know you are exactly the kind of person who should have real power in this kingdom instead of being hidden in shadows. And what do you get out of this arrangement? There must be something you want. The king has decided I need a wife to be respectable. Harlan's jaw tightened. If I don't marry by the end of this year, he will seize my remaining lands and strip my title permanently. He believes isolation and loneliness will eventually make me reconsider my principles and fall in line. He is wrong. So you just need any woman willing to sign a piece of paper for appearances? Number, Harlan said firmly. I need someone strong enough to survive what comes next. The court will scrutinize everything you do. They will test you constantly. They will try their absolute best to break you down and prove you do not belong in their world. I need someone who will not break under that pressure. Rosa looked at the contract in his outstretched hand. This is completely insane. We just met 20 minutes ago. True. But you just stood in front of the entire royal court and told them they were wrong about you and wrong about everything. That takes either extraordinary courage or complete desperation. Harlan held out the document. So which is it, Miss Duncan? Both, Rosa admitted. She took the contract from him with trembling fingers. Part 3. Rosa unfolded the contract and read it carefully in the moonlight. 1 year of marriage. At the end, she would receive 50,000 gold crowns, the exact amount Kenneth had gained from selling her. She would keep the title of Duchess Bradford for life and have full access to Harlan's resources. This is generous, she said slowly. It is fair. Harlan held out a pen. I am not buying you, Miss Duncan. I am offering an alliance. You help me keep my lands. I help you reclaim your dignity. We both win. And if I sign this, what happens next? We go back into that ballroom, and I introduce you as my wife. Then we watch Kenneth Thomas choke on his champagne. Despite everything, Rosa laughed. You really do not like these people, do you? I despise them, Harlan said simply. They are parasites, wearing crowns. But I understand them, and I know how to beat them at their own game. Rosa looked at the contract one last time. 1 year. 50,000 crowns. A title that would open every door. And the look on Kenneth's face when she walked back in married? That was worth more than gold. She signed her name. Harlan witnessed it, then tucked the document into his coat. Welcome to House Bradford, Duchess. The word hit her like lightning. Duchess. Rosa Duncan, daughter of a seamstress and a teacher. Now Duchess of Bradford. This does not feel real, she whispered. It will. Harlan offered his arm. Shall we make our announcement? They walked back into the ballroom together. The party was in full swing. Rosa spotted Kenneth at the center of a group with Lindsay at his side, both laughing. The master of ceremonies saw them first. His eyes went wide. He struck his staff against the floor. My lords and ladies, His Grace, Duke Harlan Bradford. The music died instantly. Every head turned. Harlan walked forward with Rosa on his arm, and the crowd parted like water. They climbed to the platform. Kenneth and Lindsay stood frozen, champagne glasses halfway to their lips. Duke Bradford, Gregory Thomas said carefully. We were not expecting you. I was invited by His Majesty himself, Harlan said mildly. He does enjoy reminding me of my place. Gregory's eyes flicked to Rosa. I see you brought a guest. Not a guest, Harlan said clearly. My wife, Duchess Rosa Bradford. The ballroom erupted. Nobles gasped. Women's fans snapped open. Kenneth's champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble. That is impossible, Lindsay said sharply. We just dissolved her engagement. She cannot possibly be married already. Cannot possibly. What? Harlan's tone stayed pleasant, but something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Cannot possibly have married above her station? Which part troubles you, Lady Brown? Lindsay flushed. I only meant the timing. The paperwork was filed this afternoon, Harlan said smoothly. Witnessed and sealed. All perfectly legal. He looked at Kenneth. Congratulations on your engagement, Lord Thomas. Though I must say, I got the better end of tonight's arrangements. Kenneth's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Rosa smiled. Hello, Kenneth? Rosa, he finally managed. What are you doing? Getting married, she said. Just like you. Though my husband actually chose me. Did not need 50 million gold to want me. Gregory stepped forward. This is irregular, Duke Bradford. This woman has no training, no family connections. No. Harlan cut him off. She has a mind sharper than anyone in this room. She has strategic brilliance you people have been exploiting for years. And now she has my name, my title, and my full support. I suggest you remember that. The threat was unmistakable. Gregory went pale. Now then, Harlan turned to the room. I believe the festivities should continue. My Duchess and I will take our leave. We have a household to prepare. He guided Rosa toward the exit. The crowd parted silently, nobles pressing against walls to give them space. They almost reached the entrance when Kenneth caught up. "Rosa, wait!" He grabbed her arm. "You cannot do this. This is insane. You are marrying him for revenge. I am marrying him for a future." Rosa yanked her arm free. "Something you just took from me. I had no choice. My family needed the money." "Do not pretend this was sacrifice," she said coldly. "You signed me away without hesitation. You traded me like property. And now you are surprised someone else saw my value?" She stepped back. "I hope Lindsay's money makes you happy, because you will need it when you realize she cannot think her way out of a simple negotiation." She walked away with Harlan. Kenneth did not follow. The carriage waiting outside was simple black wood. The driver touched his hat. "Bradford Hall, sir." "Yes." Harlan helped Rosa inside. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever done," Rosa said finally. "Often the same thing," Harlan replied. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Rosa admitted. "I just married a stranger. I have no idea what happens next. Next you meet the household staff. Then you sleep in a real bed. Tomorrow we discuss how to manage the court's response. And somewhere in there, we figure out how to live together for a year without killing each other." Rosa laughed despite everything. "You are very practical. I am a soldier. Practicality kept me alive." They rode in silence as the city gave way to countryside. Rosa leaned against the window, exhaustion catching up. "Harlan," she said quietly. "Yes? Thank you. For tonight. For seeing something in me worth defending." "I did not defend you," Harlan said. "You defended yourself. I just gave you a platform." He looked at her seriously. "But you are welcome. And Rosa, they were wrong about you. All of them. You have more substance than that entire ballroom combined." Rosa's throat tightened. She turned to the window before he could see the tears forming. The carriage rolled on through the night, carrying her toward a life she could not have imagined that morning. She was married. She was a duchess. She was free. And Kenneth Thomas could choke on it. Bradford Hall appeared from the darkness like a fairy tale. A stone manor rose from manicured grounds, 3 stories of windows and carved buttresses. But it was not the architecture that struck Rosa. It was the silence. No music, no bustling servants. The grounds were immaculate, but still, like a sword in its sheath. The carriage stopped. Harlan descended and offered his hand. Rosa stepped down onto gravel that crunched under her slippers. The front door opened. A line of servants stood waiting. Uniforms, identical dark blue with silver buttons. Military precision. Not a hair out of place. Not a smile in sight. "Staff, attention!" a woman's voice called. They straightened, hands behind backs, eyes forward. An older woman stepped forward, perhaps 60. Gray hair pulled back severely. She wore a housekeeper's black dress with a silver chatelaine. "Your Grace." She curtsied to Harlan, then to Rosa. "Your Grace. Welcome to Bradford Hall. I am Mrs. Shaw, head of household." "Thank you." Rosa managed. Mrs. Shaw clapped once. The servants filed back inside. Within seconds, only she remained. "I've prepared the Duchess's chambers," she said to Harlan. "The staff have been briefed. They understand discretion is paramount." "Thank you, Mrs. Shaw." Inside, Bradford Hall was austere. Dark wood paneling, minimal furniture, everything placed with precision. It felt less like a home, and more like a command center dressed to look civilian. "Your wing is east," Mrs. Shaw told Rosa as they climbed stairs. "His Grace occupies the west. You will have privacy. The connecting door remains locked unless you request otherwise. Separate wings, separate lives." This was a business arrangement, Rosa reminded herself. "Mrs." Shaw led her down a corridor and opened double doors. "Your chambers, Your Grace." Rosa stepped inside. The room was beautiful. A 4-poster bed draped in blue silk. Windows overlooking gardens. a writing desk with fresh paper, bookshelves filled with books. "I was not sure of your preferences," Mrs. Shaw said, "but His Grace mentioned you enjoy reading." "It is perfect," Rosa whispered. "Your belongings will be retrieved tomorrow. For tonight, I have left nightclothes and toiletries." Mrs. Shaw moved to the door. "If you need anything, pull that cord." "Mrs. Shaw," Rosa turned. "Why is everything so quiet here?" The housekeeper paused. "His Grace prefers order. After years of military service, he finds chaos difficult. The staff respects that. We move quietly, speak softly, maintain structure." She smiled slightly. "You will get used to it." And she left, closing the door silently. Rosa sank onto the bed. The mattress was firm, but comfortable. Everything about this place felt different, disciplined, functional, honest. She lay back and stared at the ceiling. 24 hours ago, she had been planning her future with Kenneth. Now she was married to a stranger in a silent house, wearing a title she had never dreamed of having. Tomorrow, the court would be talking. Tomorrow, Kenneth would be panicking. Tomorrow, she would have to figure out how to be a duchess. But tonight, she was simply Rosa Duncan Bradford. And that was enough. She fell asleep still wearing her emerald gown, too exhausted to change, too overwhelmed to do anything but surrender to the promise of a new beginning. Whatever came next, she would face it. Not as Kenneth's shadow, not as someone's discarded assistant, but as Duchess Rosa Bradford. And somehow, standing at the edge of this unknown future, with a stranger who had seen her worth when no one else would, Rosa felt something she had not felt in 3 long years. Hope.